without further ado, we can go ahead. Our first question came in from Marta Hoffman over at Tacony. Does anyone use APM with Kinetic? Tacony is looking to upgrade to Kinetic in the next year from version 10.2 to 100.33. She's taken some ECM classes at Insights, and the cost just doesn't justify mainly needed to save a copy of each invoice as a PDF. They don't want to use the whole ECM DocStar just for accounts payable. They're also using, it looks like, sending via APR, except invoices go out through APM. So is there anybody out there that is currently using APM with Kinetic?
I haven't run across that. I mean, APM, if they're talking about advanced print management versus advanced print routing, or advanced, I would go with the advanced print routing. And if you want to blind copy your collections third-party company, that's one way you could do it. Send them the PDF.
Anybody else? I don't know if a lot of people still use an APM.
Can you do some of the, I mean, with APR, it has a whole engine in it that you can do a whole bunch of different things. Which one is name the PDF in the subject line based on the context of what you're sending. So I don't know why they wouldn't just do that. In fact, correct me on this one, I would think you might even have a separate email that would go out to that third-party group if you wanted to. If you wanted to do a group of invoices at the end of the day.
So I'm going to say you guys are probably using DocStar.
No, we're using Highland OnBase, but I guess my question here is, since she has already other forms sending via APR, why can't the invoice also go to APR? I guess what is it relying on APM? Is it just the OCRing? Do you have the individual in the audience?
Yeah, Marta, you should be unmuted if you want to type in here.
Can you just elaborate?
Yeah. The to send a copy of the PDF to an email address is a little different than just API, a whole collection of PDFs to. Then I would have to see if that third party would be agreeable to that. Sounds like each invoice would be sent to their email as an attachment. That's the only difference.
Yep.
Or couldn't you reach into the, if you're printing those out, that PDF gets generated and stored in a temp folder, that at the end of the day, you could just scrape that and grab all of the AR invoices and send it off to the third party.
Yeah, how would I copy to a temp folder?
No, I believe it just by design. Correct me on this, Calvin. I mean, when I do a print preview or whatever of a report, it drops it into a temp file on my system.
Yeah, it would be in your Epicor temp data folder.
Okay.
So you'll have a copy of that. It's under app data, then Epicor for the user. Mark Olbrandt is mentioning they use APR. They send an email to a shared mailbox. They include it there, and then they leave the archive in the email box.
Okay. I'm just visualizing like a shared mailbox. I would have a bunch of emails with attached PDF invoices. So maybe I'm not seeing the full picture on that.
So when you print the invoice, you want a copy emailed off to them and then a copy added to the Epicor record.
APM says, do you want a copy of the PDF? And it just says what location. I just put it on a drive. So that's kind of nice. Then we just API all those PDFs to the third party. So shared email box.
Well, if you did a shared email box or even just an inbox, you should be able to write like a rule that would take that attachment and save it to a file share. And then like you're doing now, you could just API that same folder.
Okay. Red rule. Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that might work for you.
Yeah, APR is really limited. That's why they want you to buy like the APR Plus, which you need one Dockstar or I think a couple of Dockstar licenses, and that has a lot more fancy functionality. But just the basic one, there's no like save to UNC path or anything. You just basically have to email it to yourself, and then even not to yourself, but even to like a code processing at your company.com email address that just kind of grabs that, and then you have some PowerShell script that does something else with the email, whatnot. Like, just have to work around it.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Do they, just out of curiosity, last question on this, do they need a PDF or they just need it to extract certain information, or they actually want to save the image of it?
Yeah, they require the PDF, and then it has to be the invoice number has to be the name of the file, the PDF.
Mm-hmm.
And then our customers go to their website and view their invoice and pay it.
Now I do have I don't know if you're on-prem, I do have a BPM that for example, Epicor stores the PDF blob in the database for a certain amount of time, and you can capture that in a post BPM, and then you can extract it and save it to any UNC path. I could post that code.
Oh yes, we're on-prem.
Yeah, or you can use even the REST API. I think Mark Monsell has something on the forums where he shows you extracting the PDF from the database blob, and you could also just basically run that.
Well, yeah, our senior programmer is just starting to use REST, so that's an option.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Let me see here. Our next topic came in from Kevin Burrow. Nani wants to convert a grid personalization into a customization. What's the most efficient way to do that? I'm throwing this one at you, Hasa. I'm like taking it out of a personalization, turning it into a customization.
I'm assuming this is classic. If it's classic, if it's a grid personalization specifically, what you can do is you can go in as a developer and select that user's personalization when you go to pick it. And then you can basically drag the stuff around, make the grid the way you want it, and then do a right-click save on the grid, then go to Tools, Actions, Customization, and then make any small change on the customization side and hit Save again. And it will take the current layout of the grid and apply it to the customization.
And they're using Kinetic and Application Studio.
Kinetic. Interesting. So you want to take a personalization and turn it into a customization. I don't think there's a way to do that without monkeying with the JSON at the moment. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to do that that I know.
I haven't seen anything.
There's no tooling to turn. So in Classic you used to have the customization maintenance screen, and you could do some magic with that there. They, as far as I know, don't yet have a customization maintenance screen for Kinetic where you could do the same functionality. So I would say As far as I know, there's no way to do that. You can monkey with the JSON if you really want to, but that's outside the supported scope. You could go on the database and basically take that JSON and apply it as a diff to the other JSON, but that's a lot more complex than you probably want to go. I would say the easiest way to do it is to go modify the grid and then redeploy the customization.
Okay, then you turn around and said, any way to get a list of the grid? I would just throw it at DevTools. Kind of pull it out of there to get what was the list that the person personalized.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll show up. I mean, it'll show up as a JSON diff on the customization get call information, but that's going to be gnarly to sift through. Yeah, I don't really have any good way to do that. I would say recreate it in App Studio, recreate their personalization in App Studio, and then deploy that. But there's no way to turn what they already did into an actual layer, I don't think, at least not any supported way that I know of.
Likewise, same here, especially on Kinetic.
Okay, our next one is John Myers. What error message should he be looking for in the MRP logs to determine the cause of an MRP thread to shut down? And that I was kind of going over earlier in the capacity planning session, John. Just doing a search through the log files. Now, if MRP crashes, just going to the end of that log file and finding out what was it doing. That's not always going to be the guarantee, but it would be a place to start. The other would be going to like the app server log and seeing if anything was written there before the MRP process crashed.
Yeah, but the problem we're running into is that occasionally, it's not happening all the time, but our MRP process will normally starts at 11 o'clock, and it should only take 4 hours maybe to run, but sometimes we've had to go until 8 o'clock in the morning, and then we suddenly get a socket timeout error on the MRP run, but the program will still be running in the background. It'll run for another 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes, and it'll finish on its own, but it reports that error, shows up as an error in the system monitor, and when it finally finishes, it changes its status to complete, which is really odd. But the thing is, we haven't been able to find any kind of an error on what's happening, and that's why I was asking, is there a particular error we should be, or something we should be looking for, and in what logs?
The app server logs I would look at, or the MRP process log itself.
Okay. Okay, you were talking about the thread logs themselves?
Correct. So
Okay.
when MRP runs, you're going to have the main MRP process. You're going to have however many processors you kicked off and
Right.
however many schedulers. That
Right.
main MRP process, and then looking through the X number of MRP processes itself, because if one of them got stuck, it's going to kill the others too.
Yeah. In this particular case, I haven't gone through the actual process logs. I looked at the main log, but I haven't gone through the process logs. I wasn't sure whether I should be looking at the job, the unfirmed job logs to figure out what's going on. So something tells me it's some kind of a data problem, because, like I said, it's not consistent. And, we'll be running just fine, and then it'll fail. So we've gone back and forth with Epicor on this, and they've asked us to try a couple of different things in terms of adjusting timeouts and everything else, but I don't know if that's really going to take care of the issue. So.
Got it. Now, Jen Lisser over at Perlick also said take a look at possibly the SQL locks.
Okay.
On the SQL server, and Tim Cooper's turned around and said they had timeout errors during MRP, and the fix came down to playing with the number of processors along with the timeout settings in the web config file.
Yeah, and as it is, we tried to increase the number of processors or process threads up to 8, and it bombed down on us before even starting. So that that's been an issue, as well as trying to figure out what number of processors we can actually, or process threads we can use and stuff. We're running 4 currently on both the MRP and scheduling task.
What Epicor version are you on?
10.2.700.21.
Oh, okay. Shouldn't be having
And
that
how
issue.
many? And normally they'll recommend don't go with more processors than you have CPUs.
Yeah, as it is, as a VM, I believe we've got 16 cores on the VM.
Okay, then doing 4 or 8 should still be fine.
Yeah, that's what I would think, but the last time we tried to do 8, it wouldn't work. So.
So the only thing I can say to this, so I've had my shares of MRP troubles for 8 months straight in the past, and it's a big topic, obviously. So the only thing I can suggest is if you go to the forums and you search MRP timeout or MRP, there might be an answer in there. And also we would have to get more of your logs to kind of see what's going on.
Right. Okay. All right.
When I analyze the logs, I also put them into a query into Excel, so I could actually filter and sort them and make them easier to work with instead of just looking at the flat text file. It made it a lot easier.
Okay.
Chris Weininger mentions they're running 10.2.700.32. They do a restart of their task agent service prior to running MRP, and that took care of about 99% of their timeout issues.
Oh, okay. Might be an idea.
We'll get that going. And our next question came in. Scott Jenkins, also online today. What's the best way to add a total weight field to PO entry? The purchasing department is looking to have this added to track shipping costs on purchasing.
Where would the weight come from? Are we looking at part weight, or are we looking at once they ship it to show the weight that the shipper keyed in?
And Scott, you're unmuted if you want to join in. Scott says he's looking for the part weights.
Yeah.
That would just come from the part table. That would just be adding.
Yeah, so not necessarily like where to go from, what tables, etc. Just like how to get it added to the UD field on PO entry. Like if I have the UD field there and I have it linked up, what kind of BPM would I be looking at to like maybe get all those aggregated together?
So you could do a BPM that gets you the part weights for each of the parts out of the part table, and you'll have that joined with on your PO your quantities. So you do your quantity times your weights and then just do a sum.
would I do that on like a method directive or like a data directive? What would be the kind of the best route to go about that?
You could do it on a method directive for the PO update.
I'd probably do it on the data directive. If they change the part number or change the quantity, go rerun the math.
Yep.
Because they may update a date, they may update text, they could update a promise date. There's a whole lot going on the part update method directive, but a data directive, if they change the part number, you want to get the new weight. If they change the quantity, you want to do the math again.
Okay.
So if that value changes from any to any on either of those fields, rerun the math and save the new weight for the line. Add up the total lines and save the weight for the PO.
Okay. Makes sense.
Got it. Sorry, trying to type the notes here. And I'm a slow typer today. Awesome. Next one is Matthew Heck. When using an SSO-enabled app server, the active home page view is unable for the client when launched on the server. No matter what you do with the config file, it doesn't appear to work. Has anyone else come across this and found a way to fix it?
When you're logged in using SSO,
I unmuted you, Matt.
I'm wondering if you need to enable single SSO authentication on your IIS for the active homepage side, but I don't think so though. We use it with we don't use SSO that way. That we use Azure, but it works fine for us there.
So Matt, are you using Azure? Because that's the only way that I know that active homepage supports SSO.
No, we're totally on-prem, so we're just using our local Active Directory.
Gotcha. So you're using just the Windows like who's logged in. Are you logged into the server with an Active Directory account that has a valid Epicor user?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So the client launches just fine, but it's just stuck with the Windows 8 sort of tile view. No matter what we do with the config file.
It's stuck with the tile view. Oh, does it? If you just make it slash, what is it? Slash app? I can't remember what the new one is. Does it just not launch a white? Does it give you like a white homepage, or does it just never even load the homepage at all?
It's like it ignores it. No matter what you put for a switch on the properties of the shortcut or a line in the config file, it just like ignores it and always goes with that.
The only time I have seen it do that is if you guys accidentally deleted the homepage URL or mistyped the homepage URL in the config, then I've seen it ignore that. So I wonder if your server config somehow you deleted or mistyped the homepage URL. That's a separate node from the switch that tells you which client to use. There's a node in the web config itself on the client that has the homepage URL in it. That homepage URL needs to be active and valid. So one of the things that you could do there is open the config and go down to that node and copy that URL and paste it into the browser in that same box and see if that comes up, because we are actively avoiding active homepage at the moment for various issues. And that's how we stopped the people from accidentally going there. We removed that node completely from the web config. And so basically the client doesn't know that active homepage is even an option. So I'm curious if you have accidentally mistyped that, or if you're using a wildcard certificate, for example. I know for a fact that on the server side, the active homepage URL then becomes star.yourdomain.com, and it doesn't work. You have to go manually fix that in that web config.
Yeah, so the URL is in the config file and it is valid. We are using a self-signed certificate, just the one that you can create when you're deploying the app server.
Yep. So if you take that URL and you paste it into your browser in the server, does that come up?
Yes. Yep.
What's really weird is that you're saying it's not even, because I've seen it also, if it can't resolve, it just comes back and says, it gives you like a white looking page and says can't load, or you get a 404, but I've never seen it just straight up not attempted.
Yeah, just completely, it acts like it completely ignores it. I can modify I can't remember if it's the switch on the property or in the config file, but I can get it to force itself to the classic view, but I can't get it to go to the active home page. And it ultimately doesn't really matter. It's only on the server, but it's just a
Yeah, I've never seen that before. That's weird. Yeah, no, I think I'm stumped on that one.
I don't
I would
run
have to
across a
look.
lot of people using SSO, so it doesn't come up very often.
Right. No, I would have to look at your configuration, but I don't. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So you tried the shortcut switch to also take it to the active homepage, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I spent a couple hours with one of the former developers, IT guys with Codabears last year when we were first testing. It was 2021 1.13 or whatever it is, and yeah, couldn't do anything. It was just ignored us completely, and it does the same thing now. We just we're going live with 2022 1.9 or 100.9, whatever it is, and it does the same thing on the server.
Is the URL in your config in the server, is it localhost or is it the FQDN of the server?
It's the FQDN.
Try switching it to localhost and see if it makes a difference. I probably won't, but that's the only Hail Mary I got. I'm wondering if it's having a hard time resolving. No, because you copy pasted it into the browser and that loaded, so that shouldn't matter. Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. Yeah, I don't have SSO set up that way. I can't test it on my side, but I know it works fine for Azure. If you switch the app server settings from SSO to just regular username and password, does it work then?
That would be a good test.
That would be a test, because I'm wondering if it has to do with SSO. It doesn't sound like it though, because it's completely ignoring the fact that you're asking it to do that. I think that the issue is somewhere else. It would be interesting to know if you turned off SSO or made a copy of that app server with a basic auth and try to log in and force it into the shell, into the homepage, and see what it does. Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
Kevin Barrow posted wondering if it's an issue with the DNS and trying to put the loopback 127 in the host file on the server.
Yeah, but it wouldn't work on the browser either, though, if it was a DNS issue. Yeah, it's weird, though. That's really strange. Not a clue.
What version of Epical?
Let me just launch it.
21.2 was it, Matt?
Yeah, I'm just getting onto the server here to verify 100%. I get it confused between the public version versus the IT person version. It's I don't know why they insist on having two different nomenclatures. So it is 2022 1.9.
Yeah.
So that translates into what, 11.2.109.
The only thing I can think of is if you go to Internet Options, there was a time where people had to add the FQDN to the trusted sites.
Gotcha.
So I know a lot of people had that issue before. And I know servers by default don't, they run like with more security. So the fact that you say, hey, this doesn't work on the server, it works over here, it might be just that you have to add it to Internet Options on the control panel to trusted sites.
Kevin Barrow saying the browser might be a little more lax than the Epicor client with regards to certificates too.
Yeah, no, we didn't do anything special with that self-signed cert, but I did check. It must automatically place it in the trusted root. certificate authority is store, so it is in there too. So
yeah. Now try adding it to trusted sites, which is not unrelated to the
right, I
certificate.
know that's a different thing. Yeah.
Because Epic had a bug with that on 10.2, but what browser are you using? Usually, obviously, Epic has their own Chrome browser. So
yeah, we're not using like the web version. Like we're not using Kinetic through the browser, but on the server side, it is Edge.
okay, and now, but still, Epic is using a built-in browser, which is not Edge. They use the Essential Objects, which has their own Chromium engine built in. So that could be the only, that's why it works in Edge and not in that one. Maybe if you even download a Chrome, see what you get.
Gotcha. Okay. I could try different browsers as well. Yep.
Okay. Justin, I can turn around and, nope, he's already ducked out. He had to go handle an IT emergency. We'll hit his session towards the end here if he's able to make it back in. Our next one is from Jackie Glomsky. Any recommendations for creating or printing a corrective action document to send to a supplier that has quality issues? And I know you had posted this question during the SSRS topic, but I moved it over here to the Stump the Chump only because everybody has their own corrective action form and how they handle them. There is nothing out of the box in Epicor to handle this. So yes, you do require the base quality module to even be able to do a corrective action, but there are no printable corrective action forms in the system. All of them have to be built.
I built one using a BAQ report, and it was actually a pretty simple one. And one of the things you can do with that too is just the user interface. It just pops up, asks the question, which corrective action do you want printed? You fill it in, and it just prints the single page.
So even just like a BAQ report there, Jackie, would be the easiest way, but your layout's going to be different than everybody else. Jose or Hasa, do you know if there's a CAR form up on the EPI users that anyone has shared?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Now, so CAR form, is that basically like an industry template?
Unfortunately, there isn't a standard for it. Everybody does it a little different based on what their quality manager wants.
Okay. I would just say go with BAQ report.
Yep. Okay, our next one here is from Kevin again. What, if any, benefit would a supplier gain from the SourceDay platform if their customers were not using SourceDay?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Sorry, can you ask that question again? This is Michael, SourceDay.
So
Okay.
what, if any, benefit would a supplier gain from the platform if their customers were not using SourceDay?
Yeah, so there would be no benefit because, obviously a customer would
Okay, sounds good.
buy, customer would buy SourceDay and then the supplier would use that. Okay.
Awesome. That one made that one real simple.
I'm here to please.
And next one is from Mindy D. who's online for later today. She's working on right now. Thought she'd throw it out. They struggle a bit with intercompany POs. I'm just going to snicker at this because it's been a headache this year with 3 other clients. Mindy, sorry. It all works fine except when you have to make a change to one of those POs and then getting the change to replicate to the other companies correctly. And yes, you need to reject them on the other side, wait for it to resync, then reopen it, then make another change and watch it cycle. Or try and get it to push through again. The only thing that we've done to help is like a cross-company updatable BAQ and a BPM to help maintain some of the minor changes. Anybody else have any other way of handling intercompany PO changes?
Source date?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's going to be outside of the source day realm because you don't set yourself up as a vendor for yourself.
So ironically enough, just to add on to that, we do have customers that buy from other divisions within their company, and they do set them up sometimes, but it is a kind of a interesting workflow. It's not really highly recommended, but it's something that we can look at through a workflow call just to see exactly what they're trying to accomplish there.
I used to have a fix from Epicor that basically would just force them open, the POs, that you didn't have to go through the process. And then when we upgraded, they wouldn't give it back to me. So that kind of sucks. It just takes a while to make that change. And it takes like 3 people when it shouldn't, but yeah. If I could just turn it off so that it doesn't get locked would be the ideal thing, but kind of sounds like it's not really possible.
So let me ask you something. So what do you allow changes currently for a linked intercompany PO?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, right now a lot of times it's pricing changes, or that's pretty much it. But
I mean, can they make changes, or do you first have to reject it and unlink it, whatnot?
So in order to make changes, we have to reject and unlink it. But
now, okay, so because I know under company config, under modules, materials, and purchase, there is a allow linked PO changes checkbox. I don't know if you have that checked. Maybe that
that's
helps.
for just intercompany stuff.
Yep. Allow changes to be made to POs that are linked to intercompany sales orders.
That's in company config.
Yep, company config. Then go to modules, materials, and then purchase, and it'll be on the top right.
Yeah, it's checked.
Okay.
I did find a way to do it in the change suggestions without approving it. You can do it there. You can edit the PO line, but that's still kind of a pain too. So I was just wondering if anyone else had any recommendations, but kind of sounds like everyone struggles with it, according to Calvin. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I know
Well, I
it's in
think
touch with a couple other people, and they've fought with Epicor to find a way. They've also had trouble getting the other company to free up the record.
yeah. Oh yeah, I run into it every now and again too, where one will just not work, and I have to get a fix.
Yeah, it says something like it's in use, or the record is, it was a goofy error that you can't make sense of.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that one. I'm like, I haven't found a simple way to handle that, other than possibly if these are simple changes, it's just price. You could probably get away with an updatable BAQ that just replicates that over into the other company.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea.
I think a lot of our fixes in the past have been, we just identified it as a process issue and just attack the process, saying, okay, why are you making these changes? Why are you not detecting this change ahead of time?
Yeah. That would be the ideal one, to have all of your information filled out before you create the PO, or all of it correct. It's just, in a volatile time with the supply chain right now. Things change, but
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that one, Mindy. Next one we have is from Ethan Keeley. I typed his name wrong here. He has the following code in a customization, and he's looking for the SQL equivalent to sort the data that comes back. The only thing I could think of is when you get the data table back from a BAQ or wherever you're running this where clause, is just running the sort and just telling it what field and what direction you want. Anybody else have a different way of doing that?
He's got SQL in a customization. I'm not following what the. I have the following code in a customization. He's got some SQL in a customization. Is that where? I guess I'm not
Ethan, I
understanding.
have gone and unmuted you.
Okay.
Okay, this is Ethan, and you got my name really close. It's Kylie.
Kylie, sure, okay.
You got it. So I'm actually, I've got a customization on a shipping screen, and I am using the where clause. Let me see if I can get back to that chunk of code. One second. So I'm accessing this through a data set search. So I'm looking at the data sets using a list lookup. And
Gotcha. Okay.
so I'm in this particular scenario, I'm looking at like the currency exchange rate adapter. And in my where clause, I can say, you know, where the effective date is less than get date, rate group code is conf. But I want to get the most recent one. So I want to be able to do an order by effective date descending.
Gotcha. So depending on how they implemented the adapter, you might be able to get away with just typing order by at the end of the string.
Yeah.
I tried. I tried that. That didn't work. But that was the first thing I tried. Yeah.
Did it throw an exception?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
did it just not do anything?
It wouldn't compile. It wouldn't allow me to compile when I did that.
It wouldn't compile. It should compile. It should be inside the string. So you have to do, you know, just like you did later, string where clause, blah, blah, blah. And then inside that string, at the very end, add order by, and then the name of the field.
Yeah, so right after your conversion rate, CONV, apostrophe, then put that in there, order by, and then your field name and direction, and then end quote, semicolon.
Right, so all inside the same where clause, because again, depending on which adapter it is, and this will work 99% of the time, Epicor will literally plug that where clause directly into SQL as an execute procedure, and so it'll basically append an order by at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I tried that, but it didn't seem to work for me. But maybe I'll give it another shot.
Yeah, I mean, if it didn't compile, then that, because there's no, like, no matter what you type inside that quote, right, it should compile. So if it had a compile.
Yeah, I just did it again. It actually did compile. I'm guessing
it
just didn't return the results correctly or something. But
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, if it didn't return the results correctly, then one thing you can do is you can sort the data view afterwards, like Coffin suggested.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give that a try if this doesn't work. Cool. Thank you.
So, and hey, Ethan, you can stay unmuted because you're the next one as well.
This one's pretty self-explanatory. This one's pretty self-explanatory, though. When you press Control Shift and you're in the customization tools dialog, it's like an edit box. Everything shifts to the right and like reverses itself. I was wondering if there was a purpose for that, or if there's some use for that.
So there is a purpose. The editor they're using is multi-language support. So if you are writing in Chinese or some Arabic, that would be why you use it. If you by the way, if you press the other side of your keyboard, Control Shift, it'll put it back.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that if I hit Escape, I think it puts it back too. No, I got to press the Control Shift again. You're right.
Control Shift on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And unfortunately, it is annoying because we use that shortcut for other things all the time. But yeah, I did a long time ago have a bit of a yelling session with Epicor about it, and they explained it that the editor they use is multilingual support. And I said, okay, well, can we disable that? Thanks. But you know, Now it's going to
Yeah,
kinetic.
that was
so
the only use case I could think of, is that it might be used for right to left languages like Arabic or something, but that was
Yep,
it.
yep.
And here I thought they were just having me do that aggressively apply palm to forehead for just the fun of it.
Yeah, and it depends on the version of Epicor you're using, because it didn't used to do that. Then it started doing that, and then I think one of the later versions, more recent versions, it's not doing it again.
Awesome. And our next one is from Jim McCoy. They're in the process of converting Kinetic. They have a large SSRS report that runs without any problem in prod. It will not run in the Kinetic environment, and they get a timeout consistently at 2 minutes in the system. And I'm going to say there's a setting for a 2-minute timeout on a query.
Does the query take more than 2 minutes to run?
Well, you've got the combination of it's got to run the BAQ, put the data into the tables,
Now,
then run the query against the tables with SSRS. Hey,
Yeah, we
Jim.
can hear you.
Yeah, the query itself doesn't time out. Initially it did, and I came from a background for 7 years. I worked with Epicor in a totally Epicor hosted environment. So all this stuff of being now I'm working for a company that's on-prem, and all this stuff of being able to actually get to the admin console and all that stuff is really new to me. So our consulting partner did the upgrade for us, and when I started working on converting all the stuff, testing it, our first pass is just trying to get all of our classic customizations and stuff working in the Kinetic environment before we start the task of actually changing our user interface and all that stuff. And initially the BAQs, several BAQs were timing out, and I got into the console and figured out, oh, okay, in the production environment, they've got a BAQ timeout of this, and it's set to 0 in the Kinetic environment. So I went through and tried to match everything between the two environments as best I can. And that got the BAQs working. But now I get the report, or I get the error when I submit the report, even though the BAQ runs without any problem.
How long does it take the BAQ to run?
It's a little over 60 seconds.
Okay. So when Epicor runs a report, they actually pull the data with the business objects, in this case, the BAQ.
Yep.
Then they have to go, and in that reports database that gets created when you do an instance of Epicor, they create tables with GUIDs on the end of them for the run of your report.
Right.
So they have to create all those tables. Then they take that data, put it into the tables. Then they actually call the SSRS report, which runs a query with that GUID passed in. So if there's a timeout along the way, there's multiple spots that could be timing out.
Right. Okay.
Your BAQ is under 2 minutes, so that's good. The report, what you could try to do, because it's probably not keeping the GUID tables around, but you could try telling it to archive for like a day and see if it kept the GUID tables.
Okay.
If it did, then try to run the report passing that GUID in, see how long the report takes.
Okay.
Because if the report's doing something, trying to sort a whole bunch of data or something, it's going to be slower potentially. And so you could be dealing with an SSRS timeout, you could be dealing with a SQL timeout, you could be dealing with an Epicor timeout. And we got to figure out which timeout you're hitting.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I've run into this before, I've had it with like a BAQ that takes 1.5 minutes. And even though the report would normally run quickly, by the time it gets around to it, you're hitting a timeout. And I thought that there was a config file that controlled how long Epicor would wait for reports to run. And you could modify that, but I don't remember right off the top of my head.
There's a setting in the SSRS on each report for a timeout, but that looks like it's large enough that it would exceed this. It's pretty large, so that it's not causing 2 minutes.
And I think that if you're talking about the SSRS report itself, I think that's your SQL timeout. So how long does it take to run the query and do the report itself?
Okay.
But Epicor is going to be saying, hey, I need to turn this report around within X number of minutes, or else I'm going to consider my task agent locked and move on to the next thing. So I want to say I've found that at one point in time. I just don't remember which web config it was in and what the node was for it.
Okay. Well, you've pointed me in the right direction anyway. Like I say, this learning everything on the server side in Epicor has been an education for me here in the last year. So,
but I typically, anytime I run into a report, I try to find that table GUID first, grab that GUID, and if you've got the GUID, then make sure you can still run the report itself.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And Hasso shared something about building BAQ reports. There's an item on Epi users. So let me send that to everybody here. That should show up in the chat window for you.
Okay.
Maybe you can.
This is actually a BAQ that I've turned into an RDD. That's how it's getting called. So.
And maybe we can improve the performance of the BAQ, which will help with the timeout as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So most people don't know this. So Epicor had something called Baq Report Designer, and that's considered the legacy one. You should not be using that anymore.
Right.
Now, if you use it through RDD, report data definition, you can also specify parameters and pass them to your BAQ. So instead of grabbing everything and then filtering it in SSRS, you can just filter it right before with the BAQ.
And that's what I did. I did the RDD so that I could put in the parameter set and all that stuff. So that's the reason I went that route.
Maybe what you could try, modify your BAQ to return the top one record. That'll cut the BAQ to execute in a second, and see if your report runs then.
Okay.
And then, last question, do you have any sub-reports in that SSRS report?
No, it should. I've sometimes wondered if it should have. This is a thing I started that they asked for that was, it's really ought to be like 6 different reports all rolled into one. So the BAQ's a big set of union queries that are really all looking at different things. So, I could restructure all that stuff. It just seems like if it's running in the prod environment, it ought to run in Kinetic. So
and I've found when you run into really complex things like that, I typically dump them out to SQL and just run it as a straight SSRS report hitting a stored proc instead of trying to fight with the RDD and stuff, because what you can do in SQL, you've got a lot more freedom than necessarily with the BAQs. So some things that are very complex and cumbersome to do in a BAQ become very easy when you're writing the straight SQL, if that's an option for you.
Okay. Well, I've tried to stay away from doing too much on the database side because I've read enough things where a guy named Jose scolds people for making changes on their server. So
as long as you're doing read operations, you're okay. It's
okay.
Updating the database directly is a big old no-no.
Yep.
The pulling data, you should be okay.
All right.
And also, last thing, there's also, if you query the SSRS database, there is a table that will store statistics, like how long it took to get the rows, how long it took to render, and you can kind of pinpoint what the issue is. Is it the rendering? Is it the data? Is it the? There's a couple of tables. I don't know them off on the top of my head.
Okay, I'll look into that.
But that SSRS database, the base database is not large. There's just a couple of system tables. You click around, you'll find the table.
Okay. Okay, thanks, guys. At least you've pointed me in a lot of directions I can look, so appreciate it.
Awesome, sounds good. Our next one today came in from Erin Miner. She's heard a lot about Python being one of the fastest growing languages for data analytics. Is there a way to use Python in Epicor SSRS reporting?
I think there's a bunch of different things in there at the same time. So data analytics is not SSRS. You shouldn't use SSRS for data analytics unless you really hate yourself. And yes, you can use Python to read some information from Epicor for sure. You can either use Python to read the SQL directly, or you can use Python to query via REST. But I would definitely not try to use Python to do anything with SSRS, and I wouldn't do data analytics in SSRS, if that makes sense.
Totally, Aaron. I went ahead and unmuted you. I see you have a question mark up, but you're unmuted, Aaron.
Oh, okay. I just had a question about like any area within Epicor that you can utilize Python. Since it is such a growing language, I wanted to figure out if there was places that it can be utilized just for my own learning.
I mean,
I know you can use it in Power BI and things and some other outputs, but I just wanted to know if there's any place specifically within Epicor.
I mean, you can use it to invoke REST calls and things like that, but you know, it's kind of one of those things like right tool for the right job. So Epicor is Microsoft Stack, so you generally want to stick with things like .NET, C#, Angular now, which is a front-facing JavaScript framework. So while I agree Python is a very popular language, and if you want to learn it on your own, that makes sense. I don't know that there's anything specific that it would definitely help you with in Epicor that you couldn't or shouldn't do with one of the native languages. But you definitely can call REST from Python, and that could be a cool way to do like a third-party integration or something like that. Maybe has some ideas on that, but
Call REST?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that like a third party? What is that?
REST is an interface. So it's called representational state transfer. It's a way to query data out of Epicor via basically a web request.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, so you can do that. You know, if you were writing, say, an integration, you could write the integration in Python and then interrogate Epicor via the REST interface to get the information out. But within Epicor itself, I personally don't see any benefit of using Python. It would actually probably hinder you in some ways because it isn't a natively supported framework or environment. Although, again, Hassel may have a different idea on that.
No, I agree, same thing. Like even if I write the system script, I'll choose PowerShell over Python just because it's part of the stack kind of. I know there's a couple of IDEs that data scientists are starting to use, and they all run on Python, but I guess to your point, just use the REST API, pull in data, and then you can massage it and analyze it, whatnot.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. And now our next slide is was posted by Justin Priest, but he had to duck out. So not going to worry too much about this since I had a couple of questions for him. So I was trying to catch him before he ducked out of the meeting. So we can move on here over to Ethan again. Ethan Kiley, SDC question. Customer shipment entry. Table has no slip status, but it does have a ship status. What are you using with the slip status? What are you meaning here, Ethan?
So there's a field on the customer shipment entry screen in the top left. It's next to status, and it is epi binded to shiphead.slip status with an L. And when you go look at the SQL data model for shiphead, there is no slip status, but there is a ship status. And when I go to the business object, as you see in the code that I've got on the screen there, I can affect and read both ship status and slip status, even though slip status isn't a part of the data model in SQL, at least not from what I have access to.
It's a field that's just made on the fly, probably running logic based on the data that's on the ship head.
So you have to remember that the business objects aren't always a one-to-one representation of the database.
I was
So,
kind of
for
thinking
example,
that was the case,
yeah,
and it might be used in some other logic somewhere else. Okay.
exactly. So like order detail, I think it is, there's not a total price, but yet there's not a total price in the database, but there's total price in the business object. And
That
it's
makes
because
sense.
the object is running the math to do that, take into account discounts, quantity per, things like that. So this is probably another case where it's bound to something on the object, and then the object does some sort of translation for it to go to the database, and it may not even get stored in the database as the string freighted. There could be a Boolean flag or something, and then that gets translated to the word.
All right, makes sense. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And that was our last one. So we're at the end of the slide deck here. Any other last minute questions for Stumping the Chumps? Christopher Mang here, create a BPM hold products to display when creating a PO. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Are you there, Chris?
Can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha, Chris.
Okay, we have a products that not in stock when we purchase and drop ship to a customers, and then we brought back to the warehouse to the stock. We put that as a BPM hold for the products. And what we want to know is that when we create a PO for the same products, we want the products to display that, hey, we had this product in stock. Do you want to buy it more? Yes or no?
So when the buyer, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sorry.
So when the buyer puts the part on a purchase order, if you have inventory, you want to prompt them to confirm that they want to buy this?
Yes, because this product usually we not put that into the stock, because that product, when we buy it, we do a drop ship to the customer, and then the customer return and put into the warehouse. And what we want to know is that when we create another BTO PO, can that product with displays when they create a PO? To say that, hey, you have 5 in stock. Do you want to buy some more or not?
That would just be a pre-process on the purchase order before the data goes back to the server saying, hey, we have inventory on this, prompt the user for an answer, and then either cancel the transaction or allow it to go through.
Yes.
Anybody know of other ways to do that?
No, I don't. I mean, that sounds pretty straightforward. Just a BPM would do it.
There you go.
BPM will go through the maintenance side or the data directive?
Method directive, just before
Method
update or
directive?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, before update on the PO.
Okay, method directive. Okay, that sounds good.
And I would do it as a pre-process before the record gets saved so that you can confirm with the user, do you really want to buy something we already have?
Yes, that the question is.
And if you use if you use requisition and PO generate PO suggestions, then you would have to do it on requisition entry. Saying, do you really want to requisition this or not?
Okay. So we want to put it through a PO suggestion, though.
Well, are they getting a purchase order suggestion generated by the system to fill the order?
Yes,
Okay, so somebody put on that sales order buy direct.
yes,
So they're getting a PO suggestion. They're processing that PO suggestion to create the PO.
yes.
I would almost put that on the sales order then and say, hey, do you really want to buy this direct for this customer since we currently have inventory? I would ask the customer service person that put that sales order in and say, why are you marking this buy direct when we have inventory?
Yeah. So in either case, it'll be just a method directive on the probably you'll have to do a trace to see if there's a special BPM that runs when you mark it as by make direct. Not, then just on the update or something, just say, hey, are you sure?
Okay.
That's it.
Well, I'm new to all this stuff here, so I don't know for sure which direction I go. That's why I put out the question and ask.
Yeah.
That'll work. That's why we're here.
So the
And,
best part to put on the sales order site.
Yeah, I would put it because that's what's generating the demand for
Yes.
purchasing to go buy it. So
Yeah.
before the demand even gets created, I would put the blockade there so
Yeah.
that they don't put the order in incorrectly.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Jose.
Awesome.
Yep.
Kevin has a question here, Kevin Barrow. How can I pull field information from a grid in MES? I
Classic
would just
or-
go to the field help in classic mode. Yeah, you would just go to the display the field help for that.
Okay, so the issue I have is when I open up MES, first off, this is the main screen, so I've got the MES menu. I don't have field help in there. And then even if I go into like the into my work queue, when I pull up when I pull up the field help and I click inside the grid, it doesn't show me any field information. So I'm relatively new at, the customization and everything else, and I've done very little actually in Classic. I'm more familiar with Application Studio, which is relatively easy to grab that information from Data Viewer. But I'm not finding it, or properties of various different fields, but I'm not finding that actually in Classic.
Now, you're using the classic. You're using classic, right? Not Connecticut.
Right. I'm attempting to uplift Classic customizations that are pre-existing to Kinetic customizations.
Yeah.
Okay, so I turned around and pulled up the classic screen here.
Can you just right click and then
help and go to field help?
Yep.
Can you not do that, Kevin? Now you can't do it on an object. It doesn't work the same way. You have to do it in the gray space between the objects on the screen.
That would be that would be where I was missing what I needed to be able to find that. Thank you.
and also the grid. I think the grid also has to have data. You got to click into a cell, or will it just do it coming on the heading?
Exactly. If you turn around and don't have any data, you're not going to get any field help because there are no cells. So make sure you clock in an employee that has a job in there so that you can see that info.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Got that one. Any others? I don't see anything else in the hopper here. Is this when I say I think it's the earliest we've ever been late?
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll hang out for a little bit just in case there are. Just a reminder, you should get an email, I believe, tomorrow with a survey. It might show up when you close out of the meeting. Please do fill that out because we use that to find out if we're doing well, what we can improve on. So go ahead and be brutally honest. It's okay. Nobody will hate you. But that we use that for future topics, know who's doing good at presentations, what presentations you're interested in. So it is a great benefit to us.
And please, like Lisa did last time, go ahead and put in, if you have a suggestion or you need a topic covered, go ahead and put that in. We'll definitely pair you up with someone that knows the topic. Go ahead and flesh out a presentation, then we'll share that with the users in the community. And don't forget, our next meeting is in person on October 13th, and then we'll have the virtual meeting in November. And I know there's like 10 things left over in the question pile, Fred, but I think we've answered all of these.
Yeah, I think we're okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. How do you register for the meeting in October? Randy, I'll grab your email and I'll make sure that you get notifications of the in-person one here. And if anybody else wants invites to that, just let me know and I will make sure that you're on that list.
Awesome. The meeting again will be in Bloomingdale, Illinois. It's just west of Chicago, 25, 30 miles. Tim's asking if the October meeting is in person, are we still meeting as a combined Midwest group? Yes, everybody is still welcome to attend. I know sometimes we have people that join the meetings from Australia or from Europe. I don't see them flying for our local regional user group meeting, but for the November meeting, we'll be back online. So anybody that's not from the Chicagoland area will be back online the following month. Awesome. Sounds good. I will go ahead and wrap up my presentation. Thanks everybody for helping out. I think it turned out really well today.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll go ahead and terminate the meeting here and wish everybody a good day and good weekend. Bye.
Hey, awesome. Thanks, everyone.